Hello and welcome to this special edition of Creighton in the Community. It's always a pleasure when we can interview the president of Creighton, the Reverend John P. Schlegel. But today's show is tinged with a bit of sadness because we've learned that next summer he will be leaving Creighton University. As you reflect back on your 40 years at Creighton, what have you found to be the one true thing that has remained?
You know, I think my relationship with Creighton goes back over almost 40 years when I think of coming here in 1969 and leaving in 2011. And the one constant has been the clarity of our mission, that we have been authentically Catholic and Jesuit in what we do, what we say, and how we act in the community and in the classroom and in our laboratories. And I think that constancy has been something that's been a really important part of my commitment to the institution.
Let's go back to 1969.
Yes.
How did you arrive at Creighton? And I know you were a political science instructor, but how did you choose Creighton, or did Creighton choose you?
Well, actually, that's a very interesting question because in 1969, when it was what we call in the Jesuit formation my regency period, when you go off to primarily high schools and teach for a year, 2 or 3. Anyway, what I did, I had just finished a master's degree in political science at St. Louis University, and I was assigned to Campion High School in Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, to teach Latin. And I sort of had a conversation with my prefect of studies saying, I really don't think I'm worthy of that. I'm not capable of doing Latin. I just have a newly minted master's in political science. Detroit is on fire. There are issues in the world much more important than Latin. So I want to go to one of our universities. He said, fine. Call Verge Bloom at Marquette. Call Dick Spillane at Creighton. I called Verge Bloom at Marquette. Didn't answer. Called Dick Spillane at Creighton. He answered. End of story. So I arrived in July of '69 to spend what I thought was going to be 3 years teaching undergraduate political science. That's how I got here.
Well, those were very turbulent times, if I recall, in 1969. What sticks out in your mind about that period and your time here at Creighton?
Well, the thing, that is probably the most formative year of my life, 1969, because of the turbulence, the high point of the Vietnam War, the student strikes, the Kent State assassinations, or murders as we were calling them in those days, the student boycotts. I was teaching subjects that I hadn't thought of ever teaching, politics of protest, politics of oil and grain, and to a group of very hungry undergraduates. Every male had a number,
Yeah.
a draft number
Yeah.
for the lottery. It was very tense. No one slept. We were up in the residence halls or the Jesuit dining room till the wee hours of the morning, just waking up in time to get into your 9 o'clock class. But I said earlier, what was so important to me that year, I really do credit that year as absolutely seminal. First of all, it introduced me to college life. And I knew from that point on, I wanted to be a university professor. It introduced me to Creighton in particular. And I knew that my future career somehow is going to be intertwined with this institution. And thirdly, and probably most importantly, because of, for me, the blossoming of my pastoral abilities, it really saved my priesthood. Half my classmates left that year. Authority was up for grabs everywhere. I found great stability, great consolation, and great encouragement in the Creighton faculty and staff and students of 1969. And then when I was told that I only was going to have 1 year teaching and then could go to theology any place in the world I wanted to go, that was just the perfect year of my career.
Were you feeling at the time that there were certain things, because Creighton is, I think was more conservative then, that you could talk about and things you couldn't talk about in the class?
No, on the contrary, everything was wide open. And what has been a constant with me, we talked about the Creighton mission earlier, but it's been constant with me has been the Creighton student. The Creighton student is very intelligent and they're very focused and aspirational. In 1969, 2010, find them one and the same. That has not changed. Consequently, you can talk to these, at least I found I could talk to these students just about anything. Vietnam was not a Democrat or a Republican war. Vietnam was not a liberal or conservative, hawk or non. It was basically a war that was sapping the lifeblood of a nation, and therefore everybody would rally around the conversation. It wasn't a question of pointing fingers. It was a question of getting this thing done and getting out. And for these young men and women, all of who were literally vested in it, it was an extremely important, high-stress time for them.
I can't believe that you didn't get in trouble when you were a political science professor in 1969.
Well, I don't think I would deny not getting into trouble. I think I sort of lived a rather fast life under the bar. It was a very interesting conservative day. I mean, the Jesuits were primarily still wearing their cassocks, and the big issue of the day was a revision of the core curriculum, primarily the primacy of theology and philosophy in that core curriculum, which I, as a sitting president 40 years later, fully subscribe to. That's absolutely essential in our education of the contemporary citizen. But at the same time, I thought there were other issues in that time of war and turbulence and Woodstock and all of that that was more like counting angels on the head of a pin rather than looking at the issues of the world around us. And more than a few conversations on nuncios over a beer ended up in that kind of discourse. So as I said earlier, that was a seminal year in my life, and I would not be sitting here today if Dick Spillane had not picked up that telephone call in the spring of '69.
Greg Jahn was in Father Schlegel's political science class in 1969. And Greg is still with us today. Today, he is the counsel of the president and he's corporate secretary for Creighton University. You have known Father Schlegel for 40 years. You knew him as a political science instructor, and now you work for him. What do you recall about your days as his pupil?
Well, I remember a very bright, personable young man who was closer in age and spirit to us than just about any other teacher on campus.
Was he controversial?
No, he wasn't controversial, but he certainly made us think, and he brought us up controversial topics. But what set him apart from other teachers on campus was the way in which he accomplished our thinking, which when you're a junior or senior in college it's an unusual trick for a professor to accomplish that, is that he cared just as much about our grasp of an understanding of the subject matter as he did about the lecture. So a successful class for him wasn't a great lecture, it was a great intellectual engagement with the students around the lecture on a personal level.
Was there a lecture or an event that comes to mind that you recall?
Come on, Joyce, that was 41 years ago. So no, the answer is no.
In 2000, he became your boss. He
Yes.
went from being your former college professor to
Right.
your boss. What kind of boss has he been?
He's a great boss. He's as warm and engaging, intellectually engaging as the person he was in 1969. Wiser in the ways of the world, certainly, and with a highly developed and finely tuned business acumen. But other than that, he's still the same engaging, warm human being that I encountered in 1969.
What is his leadership style?
I think his leadership style is just an amazing presence and an ability to communicate with people on a one-on-one basis in the same manner that Bill Clinton can engage with people. I mean, I think their styles are really very similar. He's comfortable with, I saw him walk up to Barbara Bush at an event that I was with him at, and he was as comfortable with her as he was with the student that's sitting at our table, and just as interested, I might add.
How have you seen him deal with controversy and difficult situations?
He remains cool, calm, and collected in any crisis. He deals with it. I think he deals with it extremely well. He's able to maintain control and still project a level of personal engagement with the people in the particular issue he's dealing with. I mean, sometimes when you're dealing with controversial issues, warmth is not there, but certainly the one-on-one personal engagement is.
What will you miss most?
I can tell you that from my own experience, going back, as many 19-year-olds unconsciously do, I was in search of life heroes. And John Schlegel has been one of mine since that class. He will always be my teacher, and I will always be his student. Father Schlegel is in his own class when it comes to the university's greatest presidents. What I will miss most is his passion for this place and for the people who walk here.
You quickly moved into administration. Was that part of your plan?
Absolutely not. Father Morrison was the academic vice president those days. He had a special project. We had had a retention issue. He asked me to come down and honcho a special project for a year. So I took a little reduced time from the poli-sci department and did that project. Found I sort of liked it. He found what I liked what I did, so he gradually put me into part-time and then half-time and full-time. And so when I left here in '82, I'd had a taste of administration.
I've just come back from Australia, and I've, on the way back, stopped in Singapore, Hong Kong, Manila, Jakarta, basically to see what the Jesuits were doing. And I can come back to Omaha, Nebraska, and say, we're doing the same thing. And the heart of that is being the presence of the Lord and the institutional church in the lives of men and women.
And the grace of my second long retreat was to come back to teaching and to research and never another day in administration.
Yeah, well, that worked.
That worked very well, didn't it? Mm-hmm. Timing is everything. Father Creighton had just left the university. Father Morrison became acting president for a year, and I became interim acting vice president. And the rest is history.
Well, but you spent some time between here and there. You went to the University of San Francisco.
I did.
And did that, but you came back.
I came back. When I left here, I became Dean of Marquette and acting vice president, executive vice president at our school in Cleveland, President University of San Francisco for 9 years, and then the siren call back to Creighton, and the rest is history, as we say.
Father John Schlegel, it is a very wonderful day for us at Creighton University to recognize you as the new president. He'll be taking over in the fall of this year. And John P. Schlegel.
Thank you, Dad.
How had Creighton changed?
You know, I think a couple of things. When I got back in 2000, Creighton had grown a little bit. Creighton had continued to be the academic quality institution it was across the years. Father Morrison nurtured that, I think, extraordinarily well. But I think what changed was I found that it was not as engaged in the community as I think it could have been or should be. There wasn't a lot of vision and creativity, a lot of stability, and a lot of quality control. But I think the vision and the creativity was something that I sort of picked up, saying this is going to sort of be my mantra as we go forward.
I remember being involved in a meeting with you when you first came. You did a series of meetings with many different people on campus and groups on campus. And that was the one thing I recall you saying. That the other thing I recall you saying is that Creighton needs a living room. And so I believe your living room now probably is Harper Hall. That you wanted a place where the community could come onto campus.
Exactly.
And that is, the campus is vibrant with activity and with the community around it. What have been your proudest moments?
You know, I think looking past over a decade, it's pretty hard to sort of isolate one or two of them. I think as sort of a collectivity or a collage, I think my proudest moments are graduation mornings. When I see the fruit of the product, the efforts of the faculty, the nurturing of the staff, the inculcation of the values and our commitment to service in this community. When I see on any given weekend in May, 1,500 students walk across that stage, undergraduate or professional degrees. It's it.
That's it. When you, going and following on that question, when you arrived, you said you had 5 themes. And I believe they were, but what you wanted to pursue, they were to be, for Creighton, to be Catholic and Jesuit, to be inclusive, to be engaged, to be educationally purposeful, and fiscally responsible.
Exactly.
Did you meet your objectives?
I think we did. We were challenged on the fiscal responsibility only because the economic times that we all have experienced. We were not bereft of that negative experience in the portfolio, et cetera. But I do think so. I mean, we're sitting at I'm very proud of the freshman class of 25% students of color. The whole university is 19%. It was just cracking 9% students of color when I got here in 2000. We have added academically. The accolades that come with all the national rankings, et cetera, are fine, but for me, the quality of our academy is the quality of the fact that we've hired 59 new programs, graduate and undergraduate, in the last decade.
That's amazing.
Very, very proud of that. I think we definitely have become an institution where the town-gown relationship has become very engaged, and I'm very, very proud of that. And I think also that conversation, the conversation is not just among the Creighton constituents. That is how you design courses, that is how you put service projects in place. But also I think our voice is heard in the broader community. What we've done with campus expansion, what we've done in being really important part of the success of the Quest Center Omaha, the role we played in the TD Ameritrade placement of that stadium, what we've done for sort of that time of NCAA athletics in this community is I think also very, very important. But I go back to the things I'm most proud of are the academic quality, our commitment to mission. I've said publicly, and I'll say it again many times before I leave this campus, we have never been more purposefully Catholic and more enticingly Jesuit. And the two just really go hand in hand.
I remember reading a quote that said that John Schlegel has enlarged Creighton's physical footprint. Talk about campus expansion a little bit.
Well, I think we've had programs of this over the years. It's probably one of my favorite things to talk about only because it is so visible. But my whole thing about campus expansion at the beginning of this set of observations would be, it's what happens inside the campus that I'm most proud of. And what happens inside this campus is the essential Creighton. Having said that, adding 40 acres to the campus footprint, 250 million plus and counting, invested in new infrastructure, new facilities, academic, social, athletic, just makes the campus what we truly want it to be. I think it has made a real notable statement on the renaissance of downtown Omaha, getting rid of a lot of this derelict property and putting up the kind of collegiate university, Gothic collegiate architecture that we like to see as our footprint in this part of Omaha. I think it's going to be a real lasting testimonial to a wonderful decade of expansion. Many, many people supported it in their enthusiasm and their financial support. And I think it has made a tremendous difference in the quality of life for our students. And I do believe the 23% increase in enrollment has something to do with the quality of the campus environment.
Another change in our landscape are our windmills. Do you want to talk a little bit about your impact on improving the environment and going green at Creighton?
Well, we are. We're very vested in sustainability, beginning with me driving one of the first 10 Priuses in Omaha. But more importantly, we're into sustainability at the moment, and we are the largest producer of solar energy in the state of Nebraska as we speak with a new solar project. I have 4 wind turbines who are on their way, and that'll add to our solar independence. We're producing now between 4 and 5% of our own electricity, feeding it right into our grid. That's just part of what the students are very engaged in sustainability, the recycling and all of that kind of thing, riding bikes rather than cars. All of that is of a piece, and the faculty behind it, there are courses designed around it. Our new master's program in alternative energy technology is I think, would be a very successful program.
When we made the decision as a city to return to the river and began to put things in place to replace the Sarco and Aaron Fair and the molasses tanks and everything else with this wonderful Quest Center, Hilton, and now the stadium, the Creighton University stepped forward as well and said, it's time for us to expand our campus. The two are going to meet eventually all through those parking lots and other things. This will be such a great plus for the city, but for Creighton University as it seeks its future and follows its vision that Father Schlegel has firmly put in place, because he's elevated the enrollment, the quality of the programs, but the campus looks so much different today than it ever did before. Now it has order, form, and the beauty of it just speaks for itself, making the university a holistic institution that we're very proud of in this great city, and the credit goes to Father Schlegel. a living and learning experience as you combine academics with athletics with campus living. This adds to the citywide quality of life experience and what we're so excited about throughout all of Omaha. So look at how all this dovetails together as we look at the city and as we look at this great university and what Father Schlegel has put together in his time in the leadership role. This is leadership.
What have been some of your darkest times while at Creighton?
You know, that's a tremendous question, because we have been sort of talking about the very positive things. I think for me, the darkest times, there was an HR issue that was very painful to separate from a former colleague and former student, actually. That was very painful early on. The economy probably created some of the more difficult moments, and when I had to stand in front of, I think, my third or fourth convocation and tell the faculty and staff there would be no compensation this year. Because I'm somebody who's driven in decision-making less by the bottom line and more by the human dimension. So that takes its toll on me in a very deep way. So I think that collectivity, there's not been a lot of them, but we have had those moments, and those are the things that I do pray about and think about a lot.
I think when those of us that have worked for you see you, we always see you so very strong and so sure of yourself. What do you do when you're feeling stress and you are struggling with a decision?
Well, I think in any given combination, depending on what is the nature of the issue I'm struggling with, there are probably two or three things that I do fairly consistently. I take the issue to prayer, whatever the issue is. It always has a face or a name or a dimension. Take that to prayer. I am a great believer in regular exercise, physical exercise, and I constantly make the comment that when I hit racquetballs, they all got names or faces on them. So that is my great stress release.
Yes.
And I avoid gouging, goring, because people love to eat when they're sad and depressed. I really won't do that. But I think it's a combination of prayer and exercise. And I put that into what I call balance. And a third piece of that would be talking to trusted friends. Not even about the issue. You're just going out with one of my friends in town and just being out for an evening, or calling my oldest sister and just talking about totally non-Creighton things. That sort of melts the tension that is there. But the stress is real. I couldn't sit here and deny that this is not a stressful job. It's extraordinarily stressful, and you just simply have to have ways of absorbing that stress in a positive, creative way. I do think that's part of leadership. It's part of vision, is that you want to be seen, not that you are completely in command all the time, because that's not a good model either, but that you accept the vulnerabilities and you address the vulnerabilities, and you get up the next morning a stronger, more focused person.
Oh, that's great. You have been very, very involved in Omaha's, on the Chamber of Commerce board, many
Right.
boards, your leadership with Boy Scouts. Why is involvement in the community imperative to a university?
Well, first of all, it's imperative to me. I'm somebody who believes in very much being an engaged citizen, and I'm a great believer that if Creighton is a private institution, we are hosted by the City of Omaha, and we depend on the City of Omaha for a variety of our services. I feel it's just almost a moral obligation to keep that relationship balanced and to give back to that community. Consequently, I got deeply engaged in this town. I think at the high point I was on something like 14 boards at the same time. Don't regret a minute of that. I have my cabinet doing the same thing. Get in the community and take that Creighton logo with you. And I think because of that, the visibility of this institution has gotten significantly higher in the community. We are part of many decision-making conversations. We're frequently referenced or certainly consulted with for many things that happen, from street traffic control, whatever, to placement of a baseball stadium. We're an important part of the conversation. I like to say when I came here as a member of the Chamber of Commerce, Creighton was not terribly represented down there. When I'm leaving, Creighton is now an ex officio member of the Chamber of Commerce because of my engagement and the engagement of Dan Berkey and people like that, particularly in the zoning areas and city planning. But nonetheless, I just think it's extraordinarily important for a private school to be deeply engaged in their host community.
I attended a breakfast recently where one of the executives in Omaha said, Creighton is John Schlegel. Do you think that's going to be a liability to our next president?
Well, first of all, I'm flattered by the comment. I think we'd have to explore what the individual meant by that. I'm certainly visible in the community. And I go to the Exarban event as one of those such visibility pieces. But no, I think not. It need not be. In fact, if anything, it could be a catalyst for an engagement of my successor in the community. The beautiful thing about succession is that there is succession, that the departing party departs and the arriving party arrives, and the show goes on, so to speak. And so I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. I do think there is an expectation on the part of a variety of organizations in this community that Creighton remains visible, that Creighton remains active and articulate in the affairs of the city. So that would be my only caution.
So what's next for you?
You know, I don't know. It's a great question, but I go back to how do I handle stress? It's the same thing. I am praying, and I am conversing, and I am exercising, and I have options out there. In the weeks before I made my announcement, having made the decision during my retreat, I put a little graph in front of me: higher education, service, pastoral, domestic or international. Then I filled in all the possibilities and opportunities. I have a file over there that is about that thick with all those opportunities, emails, suggestions where to go. So, could be residence and scholar in residence in a university college in Melbourne in Australia. It could be a position in Rome. It could be a president of a high school. It could be president of another university. It could be Jesuit Relief Services or Jesuit Refugee Services. Sitting here, Joyce, I don't know, and I like the excitement of that quest because that is what I'm doing right now. That's really energizes me. I'm running the university. I think we're going to have a great year, and I'm not putting myself first. Creighton comes first. I will ultimately determine what's going to happen with the Holy Spirit, and my provincial guides me to my next venue.
Wow, you're lucky.
But I do have my passport up to date.
Good. Dr. Timothy Lannon will become the 24th president of Creighton University. Right. Why is he a good fit for us?
T. Ryan Lannon was just a student in my Poli-Sci 10 class in 1969. He'll be a great fit for that very reason. No, Tim will be fine. He's a Creighton alumnus. He'll be the first Creighton alumnus to have been president of the university. He has gone through the necessary seasoning of academic administration. His degree is in education. He's been a sitting president for a number of years. Comes with all the experiences that we've had here. Education has a commonness about it. The issues, the pressures are one and the same. They're done in different contexts, the Creighton ethos versus St. Joseph ethos, but the issues are primarily generically the same. So he's wrestled with everything I've wrestled with, save perhaps the health science side of the university. And he's a fast read and a quick read, and he's prudent enough to take counsel, and he'll do that. And I have not a second thought that it will not be a seamless transition. And both of us are very pleased to be mentor and mentee, successor, and retiree.
What parting advice do you have for Father Lannon?
Just be himself, listen to his inner voice, and do well for this institution that I am absolutely passionate about.